Welcome to Cosmic Comics. I've already taken a look at the Overmind's origins in the first part of this series, and today I'm going to look at his first attempt to, quote, crush the universe. This story takes place in Fantastic Four, Volume 1, issues number 113 through 116, published in 1971. Before things heat up, the Fantastic Four are given two warnings of an impending danger. The first comes from the Watcher, who breaks his oath of non-interference to pass along a single phrase, "Beware the Overmind." Moments later, Reed and Susan are contacted by Agatha Harkness, who implores them to flee in wake of an unknown danger she sensed with the help of little Franklin Richards. During the same flight, a news report comes on stating that the mayor of New York has issued an executive order disbanding the Fantastic Four following damages to the city during a number of superhero-related brawls. The Fantastic Four arrive at the mayor's office to find it surrounded by a full police guard who are prepared to serve warrants for the arrest of the Fantastic Four. Their arrest, albeit deserved, especially after attempting to evade arrest and attacking several officers, are being orchestrated by the mayor, who in turn is being controlled by the Overmind. The Overmind's plan is to start with the mayor, then take over the president, then over all the world leaders, and thus using Earth as a stepping stone on his way to crush the universe. As the Overmind leaves the mayor's office, he transforms into the clothes of normal people so as not to draw undue attention to himself, although he hilariously keeps his ridiculous height. The Fantastics are soon released on bail. The Overmind becomes interested in investigating the Fantastic Four further when Reed stretches his arms to grab the Pogo plane. Upon catching up with the Fantastics, the Overmind has a short battle with the Fantastic Four, wherein he overpowers and stops the Thing, knocks the Human Torch out with his own powers, shatters the Invisible Woman's force field, all while Reed rushes around to assist his fallen teammates. Upon seeing that the Fantastic Four pose no threat to him, the Overmind changes back into his Earth clothes and with a wave of his hand makes our four heroes forget that the battle ever took place. Soon the Fantastic Four are back home, now their landlord attempting to evict them, and Ben gets a stink bomb from the Yancey Street gang. It seems the entire city is turned against the Fantastic Four, and Reed is worried because they've yet to find out who or what the Overmind is. As to where the Overmind is, he's in a junkyard where he's hidden his spacecraft under a pile of junk cars. He's here to pick up the Tablet of the Eternals, on which, for whatever reason, each phase of his plan must be recorded. This trip to the spaceship is nothing more than filler. The dialogue is very sparse, and none of this has any bearing on the story moving forward. I suppose it does help show off more of the Overmind's powers and help establish his character more, but mostly it's filler. Meanwhile, the Fantastic Four contact Agatha Harkness to see if she can put them in touch with the Watcher, who they hope can tell them more about the threat of the Overmind. The Watcher tells the Overmind's origin story, covered in the previous video of this series. Perhaps the most pertinent piece of information is given afterwards when he informs the Fantastic Four that they have already fought against the Overmind. After breaking things off with the Watcher, the Fantastic Four realize that they could have fought the Overmind and never realized it, and that they may not be capable of even proving that he exists. It's at this moment that Reed starts to become uncharacteristically aggressive and begins to harp on about the fact that it's his intellect that continuously saves the team. The rest of the team realizes that Reed has been taken over by the Overmind, and before they can stop him, Reed uses his powers to escape the building. Luckily, Sue knows where to find a super-sensitive Geiger counter that can be used to track Reed down due to his escaping through the mini-reactor. Meanwhile, Reed is at the junkyard getting pushed around by the Overmind. He's doing the typical villain stuff. "I'm the greatest of the Eternals. I'm going to crush the stars. How could such a puny creature of this world dare to stand against my might? Blah, blah, blah." But then we find out that Reed had been reaching out to the Overmind with his own mind, in an attempt to call attention to himself as a challenger to the Overmind. Sensing that Reed has a plan, the Overmind begins to strip away the layers of Reed Richards' brain. Reed tries to fight off the Overmind's mind probe by thinking about equations or his wife and child, anything so that he doesn't reveal his plan. As the Overmind prepares to quash Reed's brain once and for all, the Human Torch jumps into the fray along with the Thing, who have both been following Reed with the Geiger counter. The offense from Johnny and Ben doesn't last long, as the Overmind realizes that Reed's plan was to delay until reinforcements could arrive. Remember that the Fantastic Four don't remember their previous battle with the Overmind, so it should come as no surprise that the Human's torch flame is quickly extinguished, and Ben's strongest punch does nothing. The Overmind then shows Ben what a powerful punch looks like, and bashes Ben over the head hard enough to send him several feet into the ground. That's some impressive force. The battle rages on. Sue Richards joins in, and she sees that the reason why Reed called the Overmind's attention to himself is so that the rest of the Fantastic Four could get in and the Overmind wouldn't pay them any attention. This feels forced. The Overmind was ready to move on to bigger and better things, plus his mind control abilities seem strong enough to hold far more than 4 people at bay, even if one of them is really, really smart. Perhaps most interesting about this battle is getting to learn how the Overmind's powers work. We know that he's comprised of billions of Eternals, but what does that mean? The Overmind claims that if he needs their power, I would assume intellectually or physically, all he has to do is summon it forth and keep pulling more and more power from them. Later in this arc, the Overmind implies that he can't draw upon this power all at once. Instead, it has to have time to build. This most likely explains why we see an ever-expanding radius of the Overmind's influence instead of him just taking over the Earth all at once. Johnny and Ben are out cold, and the Overmind orders Reed to kill his wife. Susan flees the scene and escapes into the city. What she finds awaiting her is a blood-fueled orgy of rage and violence spreading in an outward direction from the Overmind. Everywhere Susan turns for help, she finds, strangely, a variety of things have come up, taking every other superhero in New York out of the city. With nowhere left to turn, and bemoaning her current predicament, Agnes Harkness appears once more, telling her there is one who can help her, but that Susan's natural prejudices stopped her from considering him. The one, the only, Dr. Doom. With a tear in her eye, Susan leaves to find her worst enemy in order to save her best friend. The security at the front door to the Latverian embassy won't let her in the front door, so instead she breaks in through an upstairs window, where we find Dr. Doom having a smoke and calmly awaiting her entrance. Doom already knows why she's there, and he's been monitoring the situation all along. Susan implores Doom to help her on the basis that if the Fantastic Four lose, then the Overmind will destroy the planet. Seems like a bit of a stretch, as there are a number of other superheroes and teams out there that could still stop him. Dr. Doom agrees with me and tells her that all he sees is somebody who's taking out foes of his that had long been a thorn in his side. Susan then gets Doom to come on board by pulling one of the weakest ploys imaginable. She wins him over by belittling him. Of all the approaches I would expect to work on Doom, this level of whatever it is the worst. She says instead of finding a man with honor and nobility, she's encountered one who is posturing and has pettiness and is nothing more than a scared little man. Doom agrees to take part because pettiness and fear don't rule Dr. Doom. Oakley dokley. Let's think about this for a moment. Susan is the one who's scared, looking for help, crying, breaking into diplomatic offices, and belittling the person whose help she needs when he points out that helping her would run counter to his own interest. Just laying it out there. The two of them leave together, headed towards Reed's lab. Afterwards, they swing by the junkyard to pick up Ben and Johnny, and then move forward to facing off against the Overmind once more. Meanwhile, Reed and the Overmind begin reaping chaos within New York City. There doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to the Overmind's attack plan. It appears that both him and Reed are just slinging people and destruction in every direction. Once again, the Fantastic Four move in to attack. Ben tries to toss a building down on the Overmind, only to have it hurled back at him, and in the midst of Johnny's flames, Doom walks forth. I'm not certain if it's the writing, the art, or what, but Doom definitely feels like he has the right amount of swagger walking into this fight. We soon learn why. Doom pulls out the psionic refractor, which he built from a prototype started by Reed Richards. This device is capable of turning the Overmind's mental bolts back upon him. Again, the Overmind attempts to strike at them with his mental bolts, and again, Doom tosses them back. The Overmind rises once more, and this time turns his attention to Doom, recognizing him as the one who is leading this newfound resistance. From his position on the ground, Doom attempts to direct the psionic refractor at the Overmind once more. As a last line of defense, Doom calls upon Susan Richards to help him withstand the Overmind's might. The two of them working together is working at first, but then Reed Richards arrives. He's following the orders from the Overmind to kill Susan. Without Susan's force field to help protect it, the psionic refractor explodes from the prolonged blast of the Overmind's mental might. Without its protection, Doom continues to fight, but it doesn't take long before him and his armor are laid out. The Overmind stands triumphant, ready to take the earth and crush the stars. Then a giant fireball comes rushing forth from space and into the city. I'm not usually a fan of Deus Ex Machina moments, but I'm gonna let this one slide. Emerging from the flames is the Stranger. I will be taking a more in-depth look at the Stranger in the future, but as of right now, my research is ongoing. Oddly, the Stranger claims that it is the Overmind who has summoned him. The Overmind refutes this claim and attacks the Stranger with a mental bolt. The Overmind is shocked to discover that the Stranger is immune to his assault. Still, the Overmind brags that with his power of 1 billion brains, he will be able to overcome this adversary. But we can tell from his calm demeanor that it's the Stranger who's in charge here. The Stranger first points out that he knows that the Overmind is made up of the sum of the ancient race of Eternals. He also knows that this race was defeated by the survivors of the unfathomably huge planet Gigantus. The Stranger also lets him know that the survivors of Gigantus discovered that the Eternals had created the Overmind, but they were too late to stop it, and he had already been launched into the universe to parts unknown. To prepare for the eventual return of their ancient enemy, the survivors of Gigantus did the same thing. They combined themselves into a singular distilled being. That being is the Stranger. Or maybe not? For nearly 30 years, that's how the story stood. 29 years later, in Quasar issue number 16, that portion of the story was retconned. In Quasar, the Stranger claims to have located and then accidentally killed the composite being that the survivors of Gigantus created while trying to extract it from its organic sac. Before passing away, the being inside the sac imparted the story of his people and their galactic war with the Eternals to the Stranger. For reasons unknown, the Stranger, hearing this being's tale, decided to remain ever vigilant of the threat the ancient Eternals represented should their progeny ever return from the stars. In this manner, the Stranger took on the role of the ancient Gigantian. Perhaps the reason the Stranger took on this role is the illusion that this is still perhaps his ancestral peoples. I'll cover this story in much greater detail at a later date. Back to the story at hand. The Stranger hits the Overmind with a blast that causes him to shrink. I always picture this panel with the Overmind shrieking the same way the Wicked Witch does at the end of The Wizard of Oz. The Stranger shrinks the Overmind down to the level of the microverse and effectively cuts him off from interfering with regular-sized Earth-616 at this time. The Stranger immediately takes back off to the skies, taking but a moment to revel in a prophecy come true. The Overmind has been left with a lifeless universe to crush and conquer. Meanwhile, the Fantastics are reunited. Doom rides off into the sunset, and the Watcher shows up to pat Reed Richards on the back, telling him that his fight against the Overmind was the most important battle fought, even if he eventually lost that battle, because that struggle occupied enough of the Overmind's attention that it stalled his quest for galactic domination at Earth. If he had had the opportunity to conquer several planets first, he would have amassed enough power that not even the Stranger could have stopped him. After this, our heroes head home. In the next episode, I'll be taking a look at the surprising place that the Overmind shows up next, Earth S. The Squadron Supreme are still reeling from the Serpent Crown affair. Are they ready to face the Overmind? Thanks for watching. It helps this channel out whenever you hit any of those buttons below. I'm out.